It is 6 o'clock, and we are live here with another edition of Oregon Ducks Live on the Voice of College Football Network. My name is John Evans, joined by my co-host, as always, Owen Murray. Excited to talk about the Oregon Ducks again. It's been a bit since we've been on here. Had vacation last week, but back again talking Oregon Ducks today. It's been busy. It's been a busy couple of weeks, Owen. I'm excited to talk with you today.
I'm excited, man. It's been, we thought it was going to be a busy couple of weeks because you start fall camp, but then I don't think we really expected all the news that we've got here to get through, dude.
Yeah, we got a lot to get through today. Some big news coming out of the program within the last couple of days. We'll get into that, and then a little bit later, gonna draft the best position groups to figure out where Oregon's strengths are, where their weaknesses are. Make it a little draft, make it fun, but it's gonna be a good show today. Excited to get this started. Oh, and anything you want to hit before we get started here?
No, we're excited, dude. This is the best. This is the best time of year because you're getting your preseason football. We just got the GOAT Robbie Oots showing out for the Seahawks,
Doing big things for the Seahawks, yeah.
And then we're just getting into swing, man. I love this time of year. It's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, so to start out today, unfortunate news coming out from recent practice. Star safety, or not star, but five-star safety, Trey McNutt, broken leg last week. He's going to be out for a while, it seems like. Oh, and what was the first things that you were thinking when you heard this news?
Yeah, I mean, we got, a lot of news yesterday morning, and this one's one that hurts, but I immediately go, hey, Oregon, we're going to talk about strong position groups later. Safety is one of its strongest position groups. And while losing McNutt hurts developmentally, because this is a guy who it seemed like was ready to come in and challenge for a starting spot right away, it doesn't concern me to the level that I say, hey, we don't have somebody to play next to Dylan Thieneman. Is that where you're landing?
Yeah, exactly. That's the big thing for me is just the development, just the fact that he's obviously going to be in the program, like guys like Ifeoma Badegu have talked about. He'll be able to learn the defense, learn the playbook and stuff like that. But it's not the same as being on the field. And even if you're not on the field in actual games, being on the practice field, getting those reps, getting to be next to those guys like Kingston Lopa, Peyton Woodyard, who he's going to play with next year after Thieneman is likely headed to the draft this season. So just those reps that he would have gotten in practice throughout the entire season, losing those, that's the biggest hurt from this, biggest injury from this.
Yeah, I mean, we just had a Dan Lanning press conference today. He confirmed that he broke his leg. He had surgery. They're not putting a timer on it yet. And just that he, really liked how Trey was handling it. That's what you want to hear, at least from a freshman standpoint. It's tough. It's a tough one to handle, but he seems like he's a guy who's going to be able to bounce back based on everything we've heard.
Definitely. And these high recruits, a lot of them, college is the first time that they face adversity. They come in, they've always been the best player, and then adversity like this is not the adversity you wanted someone like Trey McKnight wanted to face. It wanted to be, playing to a higher level and playing a higher level competition he's ever seen before. But you got to have mental fortitude to be able to come back from something like this. And from what everything is saying that it's coming out of the program right now, it seems like Trey McNutt is a guy that is ready to get to work and knows that this is going to be a process for him, but it will take his time to come back, and he'll come back stronger than ever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Who do you see as that second safety starter next to Dylan Thieneman now? Did you see McNutt as a potential starter?
Just because you got a trio of guys ahead of him, Peyton Woodyard, Kingston Lopa, and Aaron Flowers, who were all freshmen on last year's team, it was hard to see him really finding a solidified starting spot, but he was definitely a guy he's really talented, 6'1", 180, really good athlete, can play a little bit in the nickel, play at the star position that Dan Lanning likes to call it in his defense, but he was going to be a guy that was going to be able to give versatility and stuff like that more than provide in any solid one starting role. So unfortunate to see him not be able to do that, but overall this year, because like you said, Oregon has guys that they know are good, they know that they are wanting to try to work into this thing next to Thieneman. It's not something that super hurts this year. It hurts in the future, just in terms of the development, a year of development that he loses on the field.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if to think where it's going to be, Thieneman is going to be that guy, probably starting high safety, but they've talked about mixing him around. He got moved around at Purdue last season as well. And then it really is an open battle right now between Woodyard, Lopa, and Flowers. Those guys are all the same age. We've seen some talk come out about Woodyard. We've seen talk come out about Lopa. We're not going to really know what it's going to be in that spot until week one. It's also, I think Jaden Kennedy could be a guy that mixes in there more potentially too out of another safety spot. He came in and started in the slot at nickel during the spring game for the Ducks. But coming in from Ole Miss, he had experience starting at strong safety, free safety for them. He's a bit of a smaller guy, profiles well to fit in that slot, but because of the news that we got last week, also that Dalen Austin, they're going to push his court case back, so he's going to be available for the team going forward, it seems like, and he's another guy that's going to be competing in that star position with with Jaden Kennedy. So just the Ducks have a lot of options in the secondary, and they like to cross-train guys and work in between different positions and have that kind of versatility. So when you do have an injury like this, that versatility really does come in handy.
Yeah, it's not a spot we're concerned about from a starting role, but it's gonna be tough.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other big piece of news to come out from this just practice recently was the suspension of wide receiver Jurion Dickey by the team. Dan Lanning said today that he's suspended indefinitely from the team, and that there's two rules: be respectful and be on time. That hasn't always been there. Dan said he wants to see him be a contributor, come back, but he said that could be somewhere, could be at Oregon, could be somewhere else. We're going to see where this goes. This is a bit of a surprise to come out of the program. There's been a lot of excitement about Dickey as a guy who was a really talented player, former 5-star recruit, and has kind of dealt with injuries, was behind a lot of really talented older players, and this year was really supposed to be his time to shine. So you hope that he can get his head on right and kind of figure things out the way they should be. Because it's not, this is not what you want to see holding him back right now. You want it to be something that's like, on the field, not off the field issues like this.
Yeah, I mean, we love student journalism on this podcast. I want to shout out Jack Lazarus, who broke the story for the Daily Emerald. Max Torres has also reported it. We chatted with Dickey at Media Day, and he talked a little bit about kind of the chip he had on his shoulder. His brother also plays for the team, is a redshirt junior DB. And from what Dan said, I mean, it really did sound like, they want to support him and find a way to bring him back, or at least get him back into college football. But this kind of did seem like it was going to be the year. This is the first year that there's been, real uncertainty in the receiver room, where it felt like he could get in there. And so it's really tough to see that happen.
Yeah, like you said, because there was just not really question marks, but a lot of unknown in general with the receiver room, because you lost all 3 starters from last year's team. Obviously, Evan Stewart's still with the program, but not going to be playing this, or at least to start this season, and for the majority of it with his knee injury. So Dickey was certainly a guy who projected to fill in heavily on the outside and be one of those main outside targets for Dante Moore or Austin Novosad in this offense. So now you're going to really need Kyler Casper to be that guy next to DeCorian Moore. Maybe see a little bit more from a Jeremiah McClellan or a Dylan Gresham, those younger guys within the program. But Ducks have a lot of depth, so not. And it's because we hadn't seen really what Jurion Dickey could do at the college level at this point. We hadn't seen. It's not a loss, but it's something that it was something that they thought they could add to the team, add to the program this year. And now he's not going to be there and not going to have that. So we hope for his sake that he can get things figured out and be all right. But just a hit to the Oregon fan base for a guy that was one of Dan Lanning's first top recruits and has been a lot of excitement around him the whole time. So people were looking forward to him getting on the field this year, and it looks like we're not going to see that, at least for now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost the reverse of the McNutt thing. I think this one hurts a little bit more in terms of what this team looks like on the field than development.
Yeah,
obviously Dickey is a guy you want to see develop, but it's a redshirt junior is a little bit different than your incoming freshman getting suspended. Even though it's interesting to see 2 5-stars. Yeah, it's a tough one to see. I thought it was interesting that Dan opened the door to him, even potentially leaving this early. I'll be curious to see how they handle it.
Yeah, Dan pretty quickly shut down any other questions about that at today's press conference. So I don't think we're going to be fighting really anything about that too soon until we see Jurion Dickey potentially at practice on the field someday. But it's going to be a little bit for him, it seems like. So unfortunate news for the Ducks, losing 2 what projected to be big pieces for them this season in Trey McNutt and Jurion Dickey, but still a lot of really talented players around the program. And that'll bring us to our next point, and just the run that the Ducks have been on the recruiting trail recently. Oregon, since we had our last show, signed 2 more 5-star recruits. 5-star edge Anthony Tank Jones committed just after we did our last show after media day, and then a couple days later, 5-star defensive back Devon Benjamin committed also. So a lot of really good, really exciting stuff going on in this 2026 class. And I don't expect you to fully know what's going on with all these guys, but what kind of excites you about what you've seen from what the Ducks are doing on the recruiting trail right now?
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you, pulling the number 1 recruit out of Alabama 2 years in a row is a statement. And I mean, getting a 5-star out of the state is good. I think that really sends a message. Especially with kind of not the relationship, but how Dan Lanning and Kalen DeBoer have played each other, in their careers so far here. I think it's really notable that Dan Lanning goes and gets the number 1 recruit out of Alabama 2 years in a row. That's big for me. Devon Benjamin, like you mentioned, I haven't seen too much about him, but this just keeps stacking this defensive back room. You talk about Trey McNutt maybe not getting that development this year. Hey, here comes another guy to stack on top of this. Depth is important, and that's what the Ducks are building. You don't just want to when you look at this class, and we can talk a little bit about this. It's maybe not the biggest class, but there's quality there. And what this means is that there's a higher chance that these guys come in and are real contributors.
Exactly. The quality, like you said, is the main thing that stands out to me from what the Ducks are doing right now on the recruiting trail. The recruiting class currently checks in at number 7 on the 24/7 composite, but that's not due to what the players are or anything. They actually have, if you take the average rating of all their players, it's the highest out of any team, just ahead of LSU. And the Ducks are, because they only have 17 commits, because you don't really need to bring in as many people when you have so much talent on the roster. You don't need to backfill as many spots, so you can focus more, instead of working on quantity, work on quality and getting the best possible recruits that you can. And we've seen the results so far on the recruiting trail for Dan Lanning. Ducks have 5-star recruits coming in this next cycle, at least committed right now. It's tied with Alabama for the most of any team. Like you said, going back and forth with DeBoer, he's in. It's a level of recruiting that Oregon has been there before, has had some really big recruits come through, but just to year after year be able to consistently put together top 10, top 5 classes, and you're pulling in blue chip after blue chip and actually battling with these SEC teams is really impressive to see. So that's what really stands out to me, is just how the quality of the recruits that Dan Lanning is going in and getting. And like you said too, going into Alabama 2 years in a row, getting Naheem offered last year, and then going in and getting Anthony Jones this year, that's deep in the SEC territory, even if you're not necessarily battling Alabama, Auburn, but the Ole Miss is going to come after those guys. Georgia is going to come after those guys, and to be able to pull them to the Pacific Northwest is really impressive to see from a recruiting standpoint. Dan Lanning is doing special things at Oregon right now, I think.
Yeah, and absolutely. And to the people who are concerned about the fact that, there's only 17 commits right now, I would just say, number one, this team has shown that it has an ability to find quality in the transfer portal, and that is frequently going to be a big part of what this team looks like every year.
And those last few classes have been, I think, around 20-ish or so recruits. So I think they'll add a few more. Some might decommit. It happens here and there, but I think they'll be probably aiming for that number around 20 to 22 recruits.
Yeah, I would not be concerned about the fact that this is a small class.
No, because exactly, you're taking in the top players and some of the top players in the country. Some other ones, Emmanuel Iheanacho, one of the top offensive tackle commits recruits in the country, 6'7", 350, just an absolutely massive kid, ranked in the top 10 of the 24/7 composite. Jet Washington, a safety, 6'5", 200 pounds, big old safety who can move sideline to sideline and also come downhill and hit people. So really excited about what he could do. And then Kendra Harrison, the other 5-star, also coming to the basketball team as a 4-star power forward or so, but big old tight end at 6'7". They're excited about what he can do in terms of his ability to go up and get the football, but also a really good mover in space for a guy at his size. So it's just bringing in the top athletes that you need to compete at this level of college football. And you see it year over year with things like Bud Elliott's blue chip ratio. Oregon has really solidified themselves as one of the top teams that you kind of have to be in that like above 50% range to really compete in college football, because at the end of the day, it just takes bodies. You need these guys. Those 4 and 5-star athletes are rated the way they are because those guys are just big, they're strong, they're athletic. Even if the football doesn't always necessarily translate as everyone would hope it would. It's a sign that you're doing things right when you just have your roster is full of those former 4 and 5 star recruits, and we see it in places like the safety room and like the receiver room when you have things like Trey McNutt getting hurt, Jorian Dickey getting hurt, but you're backfilling with your Trey McNutt. You got there's 3 4 star safeties from the year before him that who you would have been competing with anyways. On the receiver side, you're backfilling with Kyler Casper, another formerly high recruited guy. Jeremiah McClellan was a 4 star recruit. Dylan Gresham was a 4 star recruit. So you can see the effects that the recruiting is having on the team on the field as well.
Yeah, it makes me excited, man. That's what I got to say about this. It makes me excited.
Exactly, and some exciting players coming in as well. So moving on from that, the first AP poll recently was released, and the Ducks checked in at number 7, same spot as they did in the coaches poll. But Owen, what did you think about this placement for Oregon? Oregon, I think, started last year number 3, and then obviously had some hiccups in the first couple of weeks and dropped down the rankings, had to build their way up back up to that eventual number 1 spot that they held until that Ohio State game. What do you think about this placement at number 7 for the Ducks so far?
You know what I think is that what we're seeing from the voters here is that they're going to favor consistency. That's not everywhere. But you see Penn State all the way up at number 2. That's because they're returning so much production. Ohio State's returning arguably the best player in the country in Caleb Downs.
Arguably Clemson, the 2 best if you look at each side of the ball for them.
Yep. Clemson brings back their quarterback. Georgia brings back tons of players. Notre Dame keeps the best running back in the country. Texas number 1, we can talk about that a little bit. New quarterback, but he's a guy who's taking college snaps. Oregon down number 7, I think shows that they're gonna wait and see what this team looks like because there's so much changed. They have quarterbacks who've taken very limited snaps in college football. They're replacing so many starters. I think it feels about right. It would have been placing them any higher would have been I feel like making some bets on them that you're risking not being paid off.
Yeah, I think that back half of the top 10 is right where they should be where the Ducks should be checking in right now. Like you said, there are just a lot. It's a lot of projection right now. They're ranked number 7 because you can project this roster to be really good, but at the same time, you haven't seen it on the field working together. You've seen Dylan Thieneman be really good at Purdue, but you haven't seen him be really good for Oregon. You've seen Isaiah. Can Isaiah World make that jump from the Group of 5 school in Nevada to playing the top level football in the Big Ten and hold up as a left tackle when he's facing some of the best edge rushers in the country, like the guys that Penn State's got. So it's a lot of projection, like you said, but I think that ultimately falls in where kind of the range that they should be in.
Yeah, I mean, and we saw it last year when it was a lot of transfer guys. There was a transfer guy at quarterback, but it was proven. Dillon Gabriel was a known quantity, and that's why the Ducks maybe felt a little bit higher, and then they got knocked down the rankings in those first couple weeks when they didn't perform as expected. And also, the preseason poll is a guess, right? Nobody has seen any of these teams playing another team on the field yet. You go with what you know, right? You go with the guys who are college performers, and there's very few of those guys on the Ducks roster right now.
Yeah, it's definitely a situation where you got all these guys that like you said, it's just waiting for them to gel together. You got a lot of guys who did it other places, a lot of blue chip guys, highly recruited guys who are ready to step into that role. So I think 7 is about the right spot for the Ducks. I think you could have put them anywhere in that kind of range. I think they probably should wind up ahead of Miami, but with those teams like Alabama and LSU in general, across the board in college football, like you said, Ohio State's bringing in a new starting quarterback. Alabama, a new starting quarterback. Texas, Arch Manning has experience, but a new starter for this season. So, I think there are a lot of teams like that, and I think it's going to be interesting in the first couple of weeks to see how this shakes out for the Ducks. When we look ahead towards Oregon's schedule, only 2 teams within this top 25 that the Ducks are set to play: number 2 Penn State, and then number 20 Indiana. Do you think that kind of holds the Ducks back in terms of the national perception, at least to start the season? Because Oregon's going to play an easy schedule. They'll walk into the college football playoff with only a couple of losses because they didn't really play anybody yet. What do you kind of make of that so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's a balance, right? And there's a couple teams here that could get ranked. USC got 64 votes here, just off that 25th spot. I think they were, second or third out of the poll. Iowa got 5. But yeah, I mean, it's a balance, right? Because you say, hey, this is an easy schedule. It gives them a really nice road to a potential Big Ten championship berth and an auto bid.
Mhm.
That's great. That says, hey, we're not, maybe we don't get knocked up too much. Maybe it's not a really tough spot that we're in once we get to that game, as opposed to some teams that get there having played so many ranked games that are really battles, and they're having to play second, third string guys once they get to postseason football. It does make it tough though when you're looking for an at-large bid. If the Ducks, lose the Big Ten championship, if they don't make it there, it puts them in a tough position, especially if you drop the ranked game at Penn State. That doesn't give you a ton of quality wins, at least kind of as we are guessing that it's going to be. The schedule is one of the Ducks' weaker ones in the past few years, certainly weaker than last year's. And so that, when we're here at the end of the season and we're saying, hey, do the Ducks have the strength of schedule and the quality wins to get an at-large bid? That's going to be the question. That's where I would say, hey, maybe this is a little bit of a negative.
Yeah, when you look at the rest of this top 25, what kind of stands out to you here? Pretty good amount of Big Ten representation, like you said. Ohio State and Penn State checking in as top 5 teams, but Illinois number 12, Indiana number 20. There's kind of those. I think there's a lot of excitement for those kind of tier 2 teams in the Big Ten. Can any of them jump into that tier 1 with Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State? What do you think about those teams like Indiana and Illinois, and can they kind of make that push, which would make, even if Oregon's not necessarily playing those teams this year, but it would just make the strength of the conference look better as a whole?
Yeah, exactly. That's what you're getting at. When your conference is stronger, you've seen this with the SEC for years, right? When your conference is stronger, you get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. You say, hey, your conference as a whole is better. Your games are harder, even if they're not, necessarily ranked games. Everybody's playing a higher quality of opponent than somebody in the ACC or the Big 12. Whether or not that's true, it's all about perception, right? That's what poll votes are about. It's about perception. I was also curious here a little bit to see, a little bit of a helping hand for some of the college football playoff at-large teams from last year. Arizona State is all the way up at number 11. Sam Levitt's a strong quarterback, but they're losing stars. They're losing Cam Scatterbo, who was a big part of that offense. SMU at 16, Boise State at 25, Indiana at 20. Like you're seeing Tennessee at 24. Like you get these teams into there that, that they are strong teams, but they're also getting a little bit of that known quantity that say, hey, this team did make the postseason last year. We know they can get there.
Yeah, and part of that is based on that, and then also based on the fact that Indiana's bringing in a guy like Fernando Mendoza, who at least Coach Cignetti thinks can be his quarterback, and bringing him in from Cal, and we saw him have some really good games there, and he's definitely a guy that's talented and has gotten projected into the first round a little bit. But same with Arizona State, it's not really what they are losing guys on the field, but the fact that they brought back their entire coaching staff from a coaching staff that had so much excitement around it, what Kenny Dillingham was doing in that first year, just the foundation that presents. And same with another team like South Carolina, who ended last season really strong, but it was really strong because you had guys like Lenora Sellers, who you knew were going to be back finishing so strong. I think Illinois is one of the teams that really stands out to me the most. I think they're the team that's most poised to kind of solidify themselves in that number 4 spot within the Big Ten. Michigan is another threat there, but again, quarterback is a question mark. Obviously, they have the number 1 quarterback coming in, but can he be that? Can Underwood be that guy? Can he, from day one, as a 5-star commit, can he kind of lead that program to where it needs to be? But I think Illinois is a team that can solidify themselves and kind of make that push towards that next step of the Big Ten. But it's really interesting stuff overall. Going back to what you said.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, going back to what you said about Texas. Where do you feel about them as a number 1 team? Because they have so much talent on that roster, and a lot of it is just projection of what Arch Manning can try to elevate this team to.
Yeah, I was curious because you felt like it was going to be one of these top 3 teams. You can either put in the reigning champion, the team that's bringing the most back, which is probably Penn State, or Texas. I was curious because we see the stat that they're it was a great poll, and I can't remember who had it. That they're the first ever number 1 team to be an underdog in week 1. And so, they're one of the less strong teams to sit there at number 1. I think it's deserved in terms of the quality that we've seen, especially postseason wise. The fact that, they were a strong team, and they had a lot of guys going to the draft, but there were maybe teams with more quality, but they were able to win games. They were able to fight. That Arizona State game was tight, but they were a team that was really able to push through, and that's what gets teams ranked high in the poll. I do think Arch Manning has a lot of potential. He could be the quarterback for a number one ranked team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's the favorite to win the Heisman right now, and that's almost entirely a projection play, just because based on what we know about him as a recruit, what we did get to see in a couple of games that he did start last year against lower levels of competition. But Texas is, I'd probably say, in terms of roster talent, it's probably up there with any team like Ohio State or Penn State. Penn State's a tricky one because Penn State's a hard team to rank number one when they've never felt like they've been the best team in their conference before. Last year, this is Penn State's year to really prove that they can be one of those top dogs and intercept Ohio State and Michigan and Oregon, the teams that have ran through the conference in the last couple of years. So I think that's an interesting one, just to see how their season will play out and what those the expectations are higher than they've ever been for Penn State. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be really crucial to see where Penn State's ranked going into that Week 4 game against Oregon.
Because if Texas loses that first game, Oregon could be going in to play the number one team in the country at the end of September.
And the difference in resume quality and beating the number one team and the number two team is important. If the Ducks can say we beat the number one team, that's going to be a huge claim the entire season, especially when you get to college football playoff bids.
Exactly. Those are the games. That's the game to look out for on Oregon's schedule, is that one. And then obviously later in the season, a couple of pretty good matchups on the road. But yeah, so that's going to do it here for talking about the AP poll. We're going to head to a break, and we'll be back in about a minute or so. And when we get back, we're going to go through our favorite position groups on Oregon's team, and then we're each going to draft them, draft a couple from each side of the ball, and figure out kind of where the Ducks' strengths and weaknesses are at as we head towards the start of the season here in a couple weeks.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.
All right, we're back here on Oregon Ducks Live. We had a bit of a chance to go over some of the big news that's come out of Oregon camp in the last couple of weeks. Some injury news, Jurion Dickey's suspension, but a really talented team. So we are going to get into a little bit of a draft here and go through our favorite positions, position groups on this team, kind of discussing what makes these the strongest groups on Oregon's team, why we're so excited about them. And kind of figure out where this team's strengths are really going to be as we head into this season. So, Owen, I'll go ahead and give way to you and let you take the first pick here. What is your favorite position group on this team that you think is just the overall the strongest?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this before, and there's a couple spots. I really don't feel like there's a clear number one. And you can say that that's a benefit, right? You can say that, hey, this team is strong everywhere. You can also say, hey, maybe this team, it isn't like a wide receiver powerhouse. Maybe it's doesn't have the best running back room in the country to hang its hat on. And so that's interesting. I'm gonna go with the defensive line group, including we're gonna put the edges and the interior defensive linemen in there, the pass rushers. That starting group we assume of Mateo Iongloe, Amari Washington, Bear Alexander, Tatum Tuioti, that makes me feel like this team can stay in any game. It's some of the most experienced guys on this team. You got the Big Ten leader in sacks from last year. Bear Alexander is a Big Ten quantity. He's played in the SEC. He's played in the Big Ten. Amari Washington showed what he could do last year, and Tatum Tuioti really did perform as a sophomore. I'm excited to see what he can do as a junior. We talk about depth too. You got a former 5-star there, Elijah Rushing, just waiting. Blake Purchase there, Aiden Breland, another former 5-star. This, there's quality on the top, but I feel like in terms of when you look at groups here that are both really strong and have great depth, this is the one that I go to.
Yeah, like you said, experience is really just the thing that stands out. Mateo Uyunglele and Tatum Tuioti, both of those guys started the entire season last year as true sophomores off the edge, and they're going to be back this year as juniors. Both of them also got a lot of playing time as freshmen. Those are, we know what Mateo Uyunglele can do. He's projected into the first round of this upcoming draft. But Tatum Tuioti, a guy that's really solid against the run and shows the ability to kind of play more of an outside linebacker role than a traditional defensive end stuff, kind of dropping back into coverage when he needs to, just being a versatile piece that Dan Lanning can use wherever he needs. And then, like you said, on the interior, Bear Alexander got experience at Georgia, got experience at USC. The USC experience didn't really end the way he wanted it to, but it's a really talented player. He was recruited by Dan Lanning at Georgia. And if things work out for him, could be an absolute game wrecker on the inside as that 3 tech. And then Amari Washington, maybe the name I'm most excited about. I don't know if you did you read what Bruce Feldman wrote about him in the freaks list.
Yep.
But hitting over 20 miles an hour, vertical jumping, I think 36 inches it was at his size at almost 330 pounds. Dude's just a freakish athlete on the inside, and he replacing Jamari Caldwell as that nose tackle who can move between a little bit in a 0 into a 2-eye into a 1 technique, just up the middle, stuffing the run, but also being able to use that athleticism to be able to make plays in the backfield, get to the quarterback, get to the ball carrier. I'm just really excited about what Amari Washington can do on the inside, and in him and Bear Alexander as a tandem, I think is really exciting. And then, like you said, also the depth that they have, some of the young guys, Elijah Rushing, a Heisman winner for me on my college football dynasty, just an absolute beast off the edge
right now.
Yeah. And then Aiden Breland, another guy I'm really excited about. He got to talk last week after one of their practices and was just kind of talking about his athletic background, and just a guy that at his size, at 6'5", nearly 300 pounds, just a really, really good athlete. And I'm excited to see the way he can use that and translate that onto the football field, because he talked about having doing Taekwondo when he was a kid, doing jiu-jitsu as a kid. As a big MMA fan myself, if football doesn't work out for him, I'd love to see him save the UFC's heavyweight division. So just a really exciting athlete, and to see what he can do on the football field this year as a sophomore. I think mixing him in with Bear Alexander and kind of in that 3 tech, getting him in for some pass rush downs is going to be really exciting this year.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that just to tag this on is the defensive line is one of the spots that Oregon's been strongest at developing when you look at guys that come in as recruits and out of the portal.
Especially the portal, what they've done in
absolutely.
Recent years,
especially with Harmon.
A single year with Harmon, and he goes in the first round. A single year with Jamari Caldwell, and he's drafted to the NFL. And then obviously Jordan Birch was a very talented player, it was a 5-star recruit going to South Carolina, but just kind of harnessing that athleticism and turning him into a legitimate weapon off the edge for this team last year. Just exciting to see what they can do on that D line.
Very happy with him at 101.
Yeah, that was the pick I definitely would have taken as well. I think it's just the strongest overall position group on the team, because you have the most knowns. You know that Mateo Uyunglele is going to be really good. You really think that Bear Alexander and Amari Washington can plug up that middle and create a lot of disruption in the middle. So I think that's definitely the top one to go with. Looking at the board here, if I had to make my first pick, I think I got to go with the running backs, just because you got a really talented guy, Mekhi Hughes, who has he's not a given in terms of his production at Oregon, but we saw it the last 2 years at Tulane. He's been one of the top rushers in the country, a guy who can hit holes, get downhill, run through tackles, just a really talented running back, and a guy that I think the Ducks are going to lean a lot on this year, because not that the quarterback room is a question mark necessarily, but it's a young quarterback room. It's not the same as what it's been for the past couple of years for Will Stein, where he's had literally the 2 most experienced college quarterbacks of all time in Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix, where you really, really trust those guys to set everything up right on the offense, put everyone in the right places. This year, Dante Moore and Austin Novosad, you think those guys can kind of do the things that Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix did really well, but you want to kind of take that load off of them with a really strong running game, and I think Mekhi Hughes is the foundation of that. And then behind him, just having Noah Whittington back, a guy that's really experienced, knows the offense really well. Will Stein trusts in there as a blocker and as a receiver, a 6-year senior, a just real leader on this team, I think is another really solid pickup to, for my draft to get those two guys together. And then some exciting pieces behind them. We'll see what Jaden Lamar can do. Jay Harris and Dewan Riggs are two guys that have a lot of potential. Jay Harris came in last year listed 6'2", 215. This year he's listed 6'2", 225. Just continues to be become even bigger and bigger at the running back position. And so if those guys can start work again, I think this could be a really talented group back there. But yeah, overall, Mekhi Hughes is absolutely the reason. He's one of the, for running backs, it really is the main guy that counts the most. Kind of similar to quarterback or tight end, position. You only have really one of the guys that has on the field. And if I had to take anybody, I think Mekhi Hughes is one of the people on this entire team that I trust the most this season.
Yeah, it's exactly where I'd go. I'd say that, if I'm drafting skill position players, Mekhi Hughes is probably number one in terms of, production that I can trust. There's obviously a question mark with him coming from a G5 school at Tulane into the Big Ten. There's always going to be a transition there, but he feels like, one of the things that you feel good, especially when we talk about my next pick. I'm also excited, kind of about the bottom half of this room. I feel like it's got some of the best potential out there. We've seen these guys for definitely limited stats. Jay Harris absolutely did not play as much as maybe we expected him to last year, but that's a guy who I'm excited about. Dewan Riggs, that Washington game was exciting. We saw him come in at the end. These are all guys who I feel like have pop. And
exactly.
Sorry, please.
No, yeah. Where are you going with this next pick here?
I mean, and they have pop, because of one reason. That's because I'm taking the offensive line. You're taking a little bit of a guess here because there's only one returning starter. And that center Pancho Laulu. But these are guys who are huge. And they've got proven college experience. And that's why I feel okay taking them here over, some of these other maybe less experienced groups that are still very talented. I feel like these guys are more guaranteed success. Oregon's had great offensive lines, especially the last 2 years. Joe Moore Award finalists. And this feels like, just another group that can follow in that path. There's also, there's talented guys behind them too. Davey Woolley, Janoris Wilson, recruits like Fox Crater, former starters, Charlie Pickard, Kawika Rogers. These are guys I'm excited about, but the starters, really sell me on this group. I feel like they'll be strong, and we've heard a lot about how well, especially this group has worked together. Terry just talked yesterday. We heard from a bunch of these guys at Media Day. I'm excited. I'm happy to have both the lines. We got the big boys.
Yeah, like you said, it looks like on paper, it looks like you see Pancho as the only returning starter at center. You feel like you get a little bit worried about the line, but then you look across it. Isaiah World, top ranked transfer, a bunch of starting experience at Nevada. Emmanuel Pregnon, another top ranked transfer, a bunch of starting experience at USC. Matthew Bedford was a guy who was in the program last year, missed most of the season with an injury, but brought starting experience from before at Indiana. And then Alex Harkey, another guy coming up from the G5 at Texas State, but starting experience at right tackle. So it's a new offensive line group, but it's a veteran offensive line group at the same time. And I've been really excited to hear just a talk coming out of camp about how much of a leader that Pancho has been for this team and for a lot of the young guys in terms of trying to kind of meshing all the transfers together. I think that's really exciting to hear because the center is such an underrated position on the football field often because you got to be able to get the offensive line set, make sure everybody's blocking protections are everyone knows what their blocking assignments are and stuff like that. And to hear that Pancho is taking more of a vocal role, we saw him in the little like the mini doc that they release every like the 20-minute doc that they do. When they climbed Spencer's Butte this year, Pancho was one of those guys that was making the speech to the team and kind of like letting them know what it's going to be like this year. And I think that's really exciting to see because he's a guy that's really, really talented on the inside of that offensive line and could be a Remington Award. I think he was one of the preseason Remington Award honorees, and he's a guy that could find himself there at the end of the season and could find himself going in on day 2 of the NFL draft potentially. So another really good pick there. For me, if I had to look to where I'm thinking next, I got to go to the other side of the ball and go with my first pick on defense. Take the linebacker group. Bryce Betcher, you know what he is. He's really, really solid, a really athletic guy, obviously a gold glove center fielder on the baseball field, but really kind of put it all together on the football field last year as a leader for this team, is going to be one of the biggest leaders for this team going into this season. But a really athletic linebacker who can come downhill, make hits in the hole. Loves doing that. We'll talk to you all baseball season about how excited he is to go hit people once football season starts. So, and then Devin Jackson next to him, one of the most athletic players on this team. I think he's been clocked over 23 miles an hour on the treadmill. Just in terms of pure athlete, like pound for pound, it's hard to argue against him being the best athlete on this team, because doing that at his size, at 235, 240 pounds, almost, he talked about how he's put on more strength in the offseason. I think that's really exciting, because those two guys are gonna, and he's got two he was that third linebacker behind Betcher and behind Jeff Bossa last year. So another guy that he's coming into a new role as a starter, but I think he played almost 400 snaps last season. He's got a lot of experience on the field and got experience in big games last year. So just the fact that you got this two guys in the starting role where you got experience and you kind of trust them, and then some exciting guys behind them. Gavin Nix, a freshman, I think a lot of people, I've heard a lot about him already. A lot of people are excited about what he can do. And then some of the young guys like Braden Platt and Kamar Matudi, you just want to see them kind of mixing in a little bit more, kind of getting into that role that Devin Jackson had last year. And I think you got a lot of talent in that group. And so I'm excited to see what they can do.
Yeah, I'm really curious here, because, I'd say maybe this is one of the more underrated groups that Oregon has. When you maybe look at, where they're ranked nationally and where they sit. But I think what you're saying is spot on, that, you've seen how guys who are really great athletes, regardless of maybe their position, can come play at this team. Jeff Bossa was a safety when he came to Oregon. He became one of the Doug's best linebackers.
Betcher played safety his first go around on the football team. Like they've done a good job at taking those guys who are good athletes, putting on a little bit, putting a little bit of muscle, put a little bit of weight on them, and turn them into really good linebackers.
Absolutely, and these are smart guys too. That's what we talked to Betcher. We talked to I actually haven't talked to Jackson this season yet. But these are the guys that you want right in the middle of that defense, right behind the edge rushers, who are going to be so great.
Exactly. So, and you took the defensive line first, then you went back to the trenches, took the offensive line. You got one on each side of the ball. You got one more offensive group and one more defensive group to add to your team here. Where are you going to go with your next pick?
I'm going to roll with the field goal blocking unit. I feel really good. I was between a couple for this one. I'll be curious to see who you go with next. But I'm going to start with the safeties, because we talked about how we weren't really concerned about a drop off with this group with the McNutt injury, and that's why I'm going to them. Dylan Thieneman was one of the best safeties in the portal. He was great at Purdue last year. And I think to have a guy like that next to some maybe more unproven guys is the reason that I feel confident in this group. If it's maybe a guy who's been in Oregon for a while, but stepping into his first starting role instead of 31 there, I'm a little bit less confident. I'll go somewhere else. But Dylan Thieneman, I feel like both has the experience to play well and to kind of take a guy under his wing, especially when you talk to him. Behind him, Kingston Lopa, maybe the projected starter, but like we talked about earlier in this podcast, Flowers, Woodyard, could also be options there. And Thieneman is what really excites me here. That's a guy, when you're drafting Oregon players, that sits high on one board.
I don't think he makes it out of the top 5.
You talk about guaranteed experience. There aren't many guys who have more experience and starting experience, high quality starting experience, than Dylan Thieneman. I feel very confident that he'll be able to play next to a guy in this system and really show him a little bit.
Yeah, like you said, that experience and the leadership that he has next to those young guys in this room is really exciting, because he's a guy not only can he can play multiple positions on the field. He was best at Purdue when he was used as a high safety over the top and was able to roam sideline to sideline and then come downhill. But we saw versatility from him, be able to work in the slot, be able to work in the box a little bit. So you got a group of young guys like that. You can kind of work them in and know that wherever you put Thieneman, he's going to be solid. He's going to do his job, and he's going to get everything right. And also, just for those guys to be able to every day in practice, they should be asking him questions. They're, trying to find out what he's thinking on certain plays, because he's a really, really smart, really cerebral football player. That's something that really stood out to me when I got to talk to him at media day. Just talking about how important it is as a safety to be able to be a really good communicator on the backside, because especially in football nowadays, you got motions going left and right. You talk about traditionally the middle linebacker being the quarterback of the defense, but I think we could really see Dylan Thieneman be one of the strong leaders for this defense, because as a safety, you got to be able to make sure you're communicating with everyone else in the secondary, make sure the coverages are set. One guy motions from one side to the other, make sure you know who covers him, who's supposed to you're bracketing this guy, who's got their zone deep, who's got their zone shallow. I think having a guy like Thieneman with that leadership experience in that room, super important, just in terms of making sure all those young guys are going to be doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then hopefully learning from that and then applying it to when he's gone next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's not a guy that, takes long to get embedded with this team. I remember immediately when he transferred in the spring, we were able to talk to guys, and they were talking about how much of like a demon in the weight room this guy was, how he was always watching film.
Yeah, he said at media day he shows up to the facility at 5:30 a.m. every day. He's the first one there.
Insane, and that's something that these guys noticed immediately. And so not only for them to notice it, but to call it out in those spring practices is something that tells me this guy. I'm not only am I not concerned about his quality, about his leadership, but I'm not concerned that it's going to take a while to settle in.
Yeah, definitely. All right,
where are we going?
All right, so with my next pick, I took the linebackers, and then I took the running back. So I got the running backs and the linebackers. You talk about the safeties, going back to the other side of the ball, kind of their counterpart on offense, the tight ends. That's my next state group that I'm really excited about. Obviously, Kenyon Sadiq is the guy, could be the guy in this offense for the Ducks. When Will Stein got a chance to speak after their practice the other day, he talked about how they've been an 11 personnel team. It's been Tez in the slot, Stewart and Trayshawn and whoever they have at receiver. But because Evan Stewart's out this year, it might not look like that. He said it's just, we don't know if it's going to look the same. I think the tight ends and the running backs that this team have will be really important in terms of stepping up for kind of where they is in experience at receiver, because you can go to more heavy sets, go to more of those 12 personnel looks with two tight ends, the 21 personnel mix, and then two back sets. You got Oregon is thought of to be this team that's, because of the Chip Kelly era and everything, that's spread out and it's fast and everything. But Will Stein's offense they're built on running the football. Last year they split it about 50-50 in terms of running the pass, and that's because you had guys like Patrick Herbert in there who were you could put in at tight end next to Terrence Ferguson. You go the two of them and then run the football with that 12 personnel look. But also you can, you play action and flip it out. All of a sudden you got Terrence Ferguson in open space, and he was second in the country last year in yards after the catch for tight ends. The only person ahead of him was Kenyon Sadiq. So I think there's just a lot of excitement about what this tight end room can do in terms of kind of expanding the offense, and tight ends are one of my favorite positions because they really are like a chess piece on the field, because tight ends are not an indicator of run or pass, because a good tight end can do both. And so I think this is a room that you kind of have that, where Kenyon Sadiq's he's a versatile piece at tight end. At 6'3" is a bit smaller, but more of a move tight end. Use him off the line, use him in the slot a little bit, kind of get him in motion. They handed the ball to him on jet sweeps a lot last year just because of how good of an athlete he is, and you could see that when he hurdled the guy in the Big Ten championship game. So I think he has a very strong chance to lead this team in receptions this year, or at least be kind of Dante Moore's number one option within this offense. And then Jamari Johnson, another guy that really excites me from Louisville, just really, really big. He said he's gotten down to I think around like 255 it was. He's lost a little bit of weight from where he was at Louisville, where it was more towards like 265, but at 6'6", 6'7", almost, he's just a really big dude you can stick on the line and use as like a traditional tight end, and can move people in the run game, can be an option in the red zone because of his size. And then some of the depth behind it that they have, guys like Roger Saliapaga, who was one of the guys who didn't redshirt last year as a true freshman because he was so valuable on special teams. They wanted to have him out there, got it some work at tight end. And then Vander Plug, flipping him from Washington, was a really big time recruit, and just a guy that I think this program is excited about in terms of the athlete he can be and the receiving threat he can be. We'll see how it plays out as a freshman, but a lot of talented young guys behind. And I also want to give a shout out to Zach Grace. Zach Grace often gets overlooked within tight ends because he's not really a tight end. They used him as a fullback last year, but to be able to kind of give that versatile look when you want to go under center, use a real fullback. Like we said with the Seahawks, we saw the presence of Robbie Outs in that preseason game. I like fullback. I like getting under the center and running the football like that. And I think Zach Grace just having the option to do that. I remember last year, I thought I honestly had. The first time I saw him out there in that number 44, I thought were using Tatum Tuioti on offense, and he got more of a role throughout the season. I'm excited to see what he continues to do for this team.
Yeah, I mean the bar is really high for tight ends right now. You just sent potentially your best tight end in school history, certainly one of the best. He owns a ton of the records to the NFL draft, and he was taken by one of the guys on the very front of the game in terms of playing in 21 and 12 personnel. He went to the Rams. That excites me. It says that this team not only has strong tight ends, but it's a team that has tight ends right at the front of where you think the game is going. These are guys who aren't gonna be sealed to one traditional role. They're gonna be asked to do more than tight ends have done in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Owen, you got the safeties and you've got the defensive line on your defense. You've got the offensive line on your offense. You got one more group on offense. Who are you looking at here?
So if I'm looking at this right, I have a pick between the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. And this is, I feel like, really indicative of who I think is going to be more important to this team's offense, and that's why I'm a little bit worried about this. I think I'm going to roll with the quarterbacks. I was really tempted by the wide receivers because DeCorian Moore is, we just saw him come out as the best freshman in college football. In that ranking, Gary Bryant Jr. is some proven talent there, but especially with Dickey not being with the team, Kyler Casper is a very unproven talent. Gary's been out with injury for a long time. It's a little bit too much for me to bet on there. I believe in Dante Moore. That's where I'll go with this. I think that I do think that Moore will be the starter. And I feel like the fact that we've talked about it, the year in Will Stein's system behind one of the most experienced quarterback, let me give him his flowers in college football, Dylan Gabriel, gives me some confidence that alleviates the fears that we saw with that UCLA year. That doesn't mean that I think it's guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed in football, but the arm talent excites me. There's more here that excites me than that wide receiver room. I'm going to roll with that.
Yeah, like you said, like just the practice reps that he got last year, the experience that he got, not in game time, but experience in the offense against one of the top defenses in the country last year that you would have been going against every day in practice, and a defense that can give you a lot of different looks overall. So I'm excited about what he can do for this offense. We've heard Dan Lanning talk about the first scrimmage. He said the defense won. They did a good job at limiting the explosive plays from the offense, but he's seen recently the offense kind of find those explosives and be able to find those explosive, not just because Dante Moore has a really strong arm and can hit those deep balls downfield, but explosives in the screen game, explosives in the run game. And I think that's the things that a good offense and a good quarterback can open up. And that's what the Ducks have done so well in recent years with Gabriel and with Nix is creating explosives when you don't have a quarterback who hucks it 50 yards down the field to create those explosives. You can create explosives like throwing it to a guy like Gary Bryant in the slot, and he makes a couple guys at Arizona State miss, and all of a sudden that's a 70-yard touchdown. So I'm excited to see what Dante Moore can do, and just in terms of him being a kind of a point guard of this offense and distributing the ball and kind of realizing that I don't have to make those plays every time. I have really talented playmakers around me. Let's get the ball to these guys, get them out in space and see what they can do with it. That's what Oregon wants their quarterbacks to be doing. That's what Bo Nix did for this offense. It's what Dylan Gabriel did for this offense. I think that's the basis for Dante Moore. That's what they want him to kind of start with and be able to distribute and stuff like that. And then from there, can we start hitting DeCorian more on those deep shots? Can we hit Kenyon Sadiq over the middle and let him run after the catch? So excited to see what this quarterback room can do. And I don't want to count out Austin Novosad either. It's been pretty quiet in terms of what has been said about the quarterbacks coming out from camp so far. They are calling it a competition. Dante Moore is the expected to be the starter, just kind of the pedigree he has, starting experience before at UCLA. But Austin Novosad, a guy who could, if he plays well in fall camp, we could see him starting for this team. So I don't want to count him out at all, but you definitely a talented room of guys, and the more talented guys you have back there are pushing each other in practice, competing, the better product you're gonna get on the field.
Yeah, shout out to one of the fastest guys in college football, Luke Moga. Never forget that spring game touchdown.
Oh yeah. Okay, so with my last,
I think
pick
you only
here,
got one pick, right?
I could show some love to the kickers and the punters. I could go with that, but if I had to, or the special teams group, but I'll take the cornerbacks here to round out the defense. This is secondary in general. It's all new. It's 5 new starters out there, and the quarterbacks are an interesting group because you got two guys in. You got some guys with experience, but who haven't played before this team before, and then you got some guys who haven't really yet played that much at all yet at the college level, at the stage that Oregon can put teams on, but really talented and really exciting in terms of just their physical abilities and what they can do potentially down the line for this team. But Jaleel Flores, a guy that started for this team 2 years ago before he had that knee injury that held him out for all of last season, unfortunately. He was a guy that could have made a big impact for this team and would have been probably a starter last year had it not been for that injury. But getting him back in this defense to probably in a starting role like he was a couple of years ago, exciting to see, just because you know that Tosh Lupoy trusts him on that backside. You know that Chris Hampton trusts him on that backside because of what he has proven against some of the top competition in college football. He was out there guarding those 3 receivers from Washington, even if those games didn't end up the way the Ducks wanted them to. You're playing some of the best players in the country. And then Theron Johnson from transfer from Northwestern, another guy that just a lot of starting experience and in the Big Ten. He started last 2 years for Northwestern. It's Northwestern. They're not really a football school, but you're playing Big Ten football week in and week out for that team. So that just that experience that he brings is really fun to really exciting to see. And then the two my 2 fun guys that I like to talk about, Sione Laulea and then Ife Obadegwu. I think we have the expected starters in Jaleel Flores and Theron Johnson, but I would not be surprised to see those guys really push themselves towards putting themselves in the rotation and potentially even getting a starting spot at some point. Sione Laulea, just the physical tools he has as a 6'4" cornerback is really exciting. And Ife Obadegwu is probably getting the most excitement out of camp, out of maybe any player on the entire team. All the veterans are talking about him. The coaches are talking about what he's doing. He was a big recruit, missed all of last year almost with an injury as a freshman, but talked about how he was able to, take that process with him and be able to learn the playbook better, kind of study the defense, kind of learn some things that you kind of maybe need to take a step off the field to really see from that perspective, but being able to use that experience and make it valuable for him even when he's not on the field getting those reps in practice. So excited to see what those guys can do. And then obviously the freshman you have down the line, 2 5-stars there in Brandon Finney and Naeem Offord. I doubt we'll see that much of them this year just because you do have a lot of guys in front of them, but excited to see what those guys can do in the future.
Yeah. So how do we feel about the wide receivers going undrafted here?
I think wide receivers going undrafted is just a testament to the things that we've said about them previously, that it is a group that it's just a lot of question marks. And because obviously then you lose Evan Stewart, now you lose Jurion Dickey because of the suspension. You just got a lot of question marks in that room. DeCorian Morris, super talented. He's a freshman though. We saw Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams be really exciting freshmen for their teams last year. DeCorian Morris could absolutely have a season like that, but you never know because it's college football. He hasn't played at this level before. Tyler Casper, another guy that has some experience, has shown the flashes. Like you just got a lot of guys like that who like besides really Gary Bryant and Justice Lowe, like you don't have guys who have really played for this team before. So it's a lot of question marks. And I think, like we said, I think this team is going to rely less on their receivers, rely less on those 11 personnel looks, and kind of flesh things out with getting more physical in the trenches with some 12 and some 21.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty happy with my draft. You guys can tell us who you think won. I feel pretty good. But we're gonna be back next Thursday, the 21st. Thanks so much for being with us. We're really excited, man. It's almost football time. It's good. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so we're gonna yeah, we're going to be back here next Thursday, and then the week after that, before the season starts, and then we'll be getting our episodes going after games, and then we'll have that schedule locked in for you guys once the season starts and once we're back to school and everything. So I'm excited to get another chance to talk to you about this, Owen, and looking forward to the next one.
Awesome. See you later.